From the FSU College of Law, I'm Alva Striplin.
And I'm Jeff Kahn.
The greatest legal minds in Florida and around the country have come from the FSU College of Law, and they're not just arguing cases in a courtroom.
From heading up multi-million-dollar companies and state agencies to advising on financial ventures and mergers that are changing the business landscape in Florida, these FSU College alums are
taking care of business. Today's guest is a partner with Foley Lardner. She's a 2001 graduate of the Florida State University College of Law, and she teaches a course called Limits of the Private Sector for the Stoops Colab that qualifies under the certification of Privacy Law and Policy. We welcome to the show Christi Lawson.
Good afternoon. It's so great to be here.
We're glad you're here, and you're wearing garnet and gold, I see.
Of course, you have to represent.
I love
game
it.
Weekend.
I love it. You're here for the game this weekend?
I'm here for the game.
Who are we playing for?
Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech. Go ahead and give me a score prediction.
I'm going to say Florida State 42, Georgia Tech 14.
Okay.
Wow.
I like
Big
it.
win.
I'll take that. Big win. Big win.
I think we're due for one.
We're due for one. We are.
For a few years, yeah.
All right. So let's jump in. Tell me how you got to Florida State University College of Law, and where's your undergrad?
My undergrad is Florida State, so but I had always wanted to do law school, and coming up, I'm from a small town in Central Florida, Bartow, Florida, and one of the first grads of Florida State Law was John Frost. And although John went to Florida undergrad, he was a big proponent of Florida State Law, so I heard about that growing up through Bartow. And then going to Florida State, I had actually decided I wasn't going to go to law school. I was going to go to D.C. and be in some type of policy, and change the world. And I had a very wise professor who said, I don't want to dampen your dreams. You go for it. My undergrad was a concentration in Middle Eastern relations. And he said, but as a woman, you need to take the right path so you don't get stuck behind a desk in the State Department. And I really appreciate that he did that for me, right?
Great advice.
And he said, go to law school because you can get the same position, but they'll have to pay you more and treat you better. And so I said, well, I've always wanted to go to law school. That was kind of, I changed my mind after being an undergrad. And so that's how I came to law school. And then I came to law school and fell in love with the corporate classes because it was all new to me. I had never known corporate law other than what you saw on TV. And I found it fascinating. And so I went that route and never looked back.
Never looked back. So that sounds like you ended up right where you thought you were going to be, doing what you wanted to do.
I will tell you, my UCC professor, Professor Ulston here at FSU, if any of you ever had him, I loved his classes, but my lowest grade in law school, my only C was in his class. So years later, when I was doing a lot of financial regulatory work and bank work, I ran into him and he's like, I heard you're doing bank work. Wasn't I your lowest grade? And I said, well, doesn't that say a lot about law school, that it doesn't matter it was your lowest grade. It can still be what you specialize in later.
That's great advice to our law students who are listening.
Yeah, and now I love it. It's just so interesting. There's never a boring day. And what I focus on is consumer financial regulations.
Okay.
And represent lenders, consumer reporting agencies, anybody in the consumer financial sector that want anything to do with compliance. I also oversee their litigation, and so it's kind of I'm a subject matter expert more so than whether transactional or litigation, because you have to know the regulations that apply to the entity to really understand what their guardrails are in the industry.
Okay. So how did you take that experience and turn it into a course for the Stoops Colab?
Well, that I haven't thought about that one. Really tried to be practical of thinking about what do everyday practitioners and those in the industry need to know about the financial privacy laws.
Okay.
And what laws do you need to know that apply for the practical day-to-day running of either a financial institution or any type of participant in the consumer financial world? Mm-hmm. What's actually practically helpful for you to know about.
Right. And you teach a similar course for the Juris Master program, correct?
Correct.
It's more of a semester-long course.
For Juris Masters, we started off, and I was in the inaugural group of professors for that in developing the regulatory compliance course. And at the time we were developing it, there wasn't really a lot of anything out there as far as law school classes or even undergrad classes regarding regulatory compliance. You saw maybe some law review articles and some white papers, but there wasn't any course materials. There wasn't even a textbook for it. So we really sat down and said, what does today's compliance professional need to know? And that's how we developed the regulatory compliance class. And so I did that for a number of semesters and was looking to take a break from it. And then that's when my friends at the law school said, well, you're taking a break. Why don't you come to the Stoops Colab for us?
We have another inaugural opportunity for
Yes.
you. You're just all about the challenge
And
there.
they're like, it's similar topics. We just need you to talk about, the privacy aspects of what you do, which
Right.
really, the privacy laws and the privacy aspects of all the different regulations really are what drive the regulations and the main topic. And so it wasn't much of a pivot to take what we were doing in that JM course and develop the Stoops Colab.
It's a much shorter class.
Much shorter, 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Which is a lot to pack in. So for those who take the class, I will apologize in advance if it seems like I'm just like stuffing regulation after regulation in, because we were trying to figure out how to get everything covered, and it's a lot to cover.
It is.
Why do you think compliance has sort of taken off at the law school level? Because obviously the JM program is not geared towards the JD student, right? It's a JM program, and this executive training through the Stoops Colab, of course, is also not necessarily geared only to the law student, although we're hoping that students might be interested in some of these programs. But I guess my question is, why is compliance a natural fit for the JD's program, right? Why is it that it's been born out of that area? As you said, because as you mentioned, compliance wasn't a big thing at the undergrad level either. And of course now it's exploded. We have this JM program, but we also have added several compliance classes for the JDs at the law school.
I think because it was a huge hole in what was missing in the academic world for law schools. When I started practicing, you didn't hear a whole lot about compliance officers or chief compliance officers. It was just fit within kind of the law department, or maybe they'd have a separate audit division, but it really wasn't a big thing until you started having changes in the laws and regulations and some pretty large regulatory actions that highlighted the fact of, wait a minute, these institutions need to have a better compliance program, need to have more of a handle. And after the passage of Dodd-Frank, in 2010, it really exploded because there were regulations saying you have to have a chief compliance officer that reports to the board of directors, and people were scrambling. The industry was scrambling to hire people. If you had some kind of background in compliance, you were a hot commodity, and to this day still are, because there was not, a lot of students coming out with any of that experience. So what we found was those in the industry were having to home grow, if you will, or teach compliance internally and develop that. And we're looking back to law schools going, hey, we want to recruit your students. Who do you have? And the law schools were going, we don't have anybody.
Yeah.
We don't have that topic.
Yeah.
And that's actually what started my conversation with the law school. Was the dean at the time knew that's what I was practicing and called me up one day going, hey, we need your help.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to continue? This isn't just a flash in the pan. This is an area that just now is going to be an area for students to find jobs, get jobs, and so on?
As I tell those who work with me, I've never had a slow day, and I don't see one coming, ever. Especially when you look at the number of laws and regulations, they just keep coming out, the number of regulatory guidance documents. I was on the phone with the CFPB yesterday talking about 2 advisory opinions that they just put out because the industry was trying to understand, what does this mean? What does this require? And it's something new every day. And even outside of my world in the consumer finance, look at it from a healthcare perspective or any other regulated industry. And, there's new regulations coming out daily. And now law schools are starting to pick up on it, but you still don't have a large number of people in the wings waiting to become a compliance officer. Mm-hmm.
And if you had somebody who said, I am interested in what you're doing, right? As you said, there's never a dull day, there's never a quiet day. The days go by fast. other than a general kind of regulatory compliance or a compliance course, do you recommend sort of specific subject matter classes as well? I mean, if you're in the consumer, for example, as you said, UCC or consumer law, and if I'm interested in healthcare compliance, I go take the health law class. Is it?
Absolutely. The one class I never took, and now I always wish I had, was administrative procedures law. Like, why didn't I take that class? You know, I think that should be the bedrock. Administrative procedures, how these regulators are allowed, especially like with right now, everybody's talking about the CFPB was not constitutional, and you have to know kind of the underpinnings of appealing administrative decisions and so forth. That's kind of like the bedrock class, and then start to specialize in different areas.
And I think that we have shown, again, and we're not unusual, but I think we've taken the lead on this with the programs that you've been involved with in the classes, you know, the starting classes. But we've added LegReg, for example, to our first year as a first year required course. So I think, again, we're recognizing that these students need to understand that. It's not just administrative law, obviously, but it has a big chunk of that. So that's been a nice addition for our students to get that exposure, even if they're not necessarily thinking about it.
And statutory interpretation is going to be key.
Yeah.
So that was never a separate class. I think I learned statutory interpretation in contract law or maybe a little bit of it in con law, and you kind of pieced it together from different classes. But really understanding how you interpret statutes and read statutes, and hey, that comma being there means a really big deal.
Right.
Well, there's one class that's the best for statutory interpretation. That's, of course, tax, which is what I teach. So that. I appreciate you pitching that for me, and we didn't plan that at all. Let me ask one more question.
Yes.
I liked what you said, and my ears perked up because, of course, we live in, or at least historically, we've thought of ourselves as lawyers on either the litigation track or the deal track, right, the transactional track. And you said, I'm not right on those. I'm a hybrid. I'm a subject matter expert. And is that because your phone is ringing with the litigators who need to know what's going on when they go to a case, and the deal makers who need to know what's going on when they're signing, making the deal and contract, and so you're basically kind of an advisor to all those groups. Is that kind of how you picture yourself?
That's exactly right. I started out in litigation, and I learned the regulations representing big banks. And if you're representing and litigating for a bank and all the different regulations that apply to banks, and then when Dodd-Frank came out, there was no one who knew the financial world really, because so clients were turning to me going, "Can you read this and tell us what we need to do?" Mm-hmm. So a compliance lawyer was born by reading, the 1,200 pages of Dodd-Frank and figuring it out. And then it became, well, you know this area and you know how it applies to us from a litigation standpoint. Can you help us develop policies and procedures? And it just took off from there. And I like to say that my firm really doesn't know what to do with me because they don't really know which group I fit in, and that's fine with me. Mm-hmm. Because it really is subject matter expertise. It's knowing the industry, knowing the players, how the statutes apply, because that drives the litigation and helps develop defenses in the litigation. But it also, on the compliance side, the transactional folks say, we love that you have that experience because now you can help us draft documents and know what to look for and avoid in the documents. And so I do a lot of also due diligence in mergers and acquisition deals. Hey, we want to buy this financial institution. Can you take a look, see if they're up to snuff, if there's any hidden risks that aren't exposed? And so with that practice, that took off too, that I've kind of developed my own group that we do consumer financial regulatory work. And I have what I call a reformed tax lawyer. She's also a Florida State grad, Cheryl Henderson. And with that tax eye, she's amazing at seeing details. So I've reformed, I call it being reformed to the compliance world. And then I have a litigator associate because she comes with a litigation eye. And so our team has people from both sides that really are learning the industry and working with industry participants, day in and day out.
Mm-hmm. What would you do if someone told you could not do what you're doing anymore and you couldn't practice law? What other career would you choose?
Oh, my goodness. The joke at work is every day we talk about what we could be doing that would be a better profession. Some days it's, we want to scoop ice cream. Other days I'm going to run a flower shop. All these things that are completely in opposite to the law, right? But if I was being serious, it probably would be doing something in compliance world because it's what I know and enjoy.
Yeah.
I love the puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
right? Here's a problem. Can we do this?
Right.
Well, it's not just one place you have to look. If I do it under this law, am I changing something that's going to make another law not work? And so to me, it's more like putting a puzzle together. And if one part of the puzzle moves, how is that going to affect the rest of the puzzle? And so it's never boring.
Well, we're grateful that you're bringing that expertise to our students. We really are excited about your course that comes up. I know your course for the JM program is very well attended, so we're excited to have you on board as part of the Stoops Colab. So before we close it out, have a few of the Think Fast series. I'm going to ask you real quick,
Oh,
and
boy, okay.
yeah, these are tough ones. How do you take your coffee?
Oh, lots of cream
Lots of cream.
and constant.
All day.
day.
How do you take your coffee? By the hour. Yeah. That's a good answer. What's one movie you could watch over and over and over again?
When Harry Met Sally.
Oh, a rom-com. I love it. I would totally agree with you. And let's see. We got your prediction for the game. What else are you going to do while you're here in Tallahassee? What's another must stop?
Oh, for me, a must stop is Bagel.
Bagel,
There is not a
bagel.
better sandwich place in the world. So my husband knows. He knows. Game day, we're going to Bagel.
Are they still out there? Is it on Pensacola?
They still are. I
Okay.
saw the owner last time I was here.
Nice. A constant in Tallahassee. All right. Well, Christi, this has been great. We enjoyed having you. Have a great weekend, and we hope your visit is good, and we hope your prediction for the game comes true.
Me too. Well, thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.